Good morning, guys. So, today what we're going to be covering is food chains, and we are going to be referencing some of the vocabulary that we talked about yesterday. So, this file, I'm making it available. I'm going to attach it to today's post. It's also going to be found in files. Just in case you do want to print it out and do it on this type of file, or if you don't have a printer, you don't have to print it out. What you can do is just copy basically everything on your notes. And that's pretty much it. So first of all, what is a food chain? Well, a food chain is a series of organisms. Oops, not this one. Here it is. A series of organisms each dependent on the next as a food source. Each dependent on the next as a source of food. Okay, underneath that, in just smaller letters or smaller font, and we're gonna write this down. Energy decreases because it is lost to metabolic heat when organisms are consumed. Okay, energy decreases because it is lost to metabolic heat when organisms are consumed. So with that in mind, we have energy gets used / decreased as it is passed from one organism to the next. So energy gets used or decreases as it's passed from one organism to the next. So let's get started with the actual food chain. Okay, so in every food chain, we're going to start off with the producers. And the producer produces their own food using sunlight. So a producer, I'm going to put creates their own food using sunlight. Okay, that is your producer. And your producers are going to be your autotrophs. Okay? And your autotrophs are going to be using carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight to produce glucose and oxygen. So I'm going to write down the photosynthesis equation right here where it says autotrophs. So it's 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O. Okay, and I'm going to draw the sun right now. We'll draw it. Which is radiant energy. Will give us one molecule of glucose, which is C6H12O6, and 6 molecules of oxygen, 6O2. Okay, and this is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. So after your producer, which is the one that makes the food, right, we are going to be eaten, right? So let's say grass, right? And our primary consumer will eat that grass. And that is going to be it is the first organism to consume the producer. And most of the time, this organism will be a herbivore. Okay, and because they consume, they cannot make their own food, they are considered heterotrophs. Okay, so this organism, this primary consumer, will be a hunted prey. Okay, and these are going to be your plant eaters. Okay, these will be your plant eaters. So who's going to eat your primary consumer? That is going to be your secondary consumer. And your secondary consumer is going to be the first organism to eat the primary consumer. So here, let's say our producer is the grass, our primary consumer is a grasshopper. The organism that will eat the grasshopper will be a frog, and our frog is a secondary consumer. Okay, our secondary consumer is considered a hunter predator. Okay, a hunter predator. Okay, and this organism is going to be a plant or meat eater. So they can eat both. They can eat plant or they can eat meat, and they are called omnivores. Now, who's going to eat the frog? Well, in my food chain, it's going to be a snake. And the snake would be our tertiary consumer. Okay, so a tertiary consumer is the third organism to eat third organism to eat. Okay, and it is going to be eating the secondary consumer. Okay, so it eats your secondary consumer. I'm going to go back to my secondary consumer. I'm going to let it dry. Okay, and again, our tertiary consumers are also considered hunter predators. They can be omnivores, or they can jump into a carnivore. Then moving on to our last type of consumer, which is going to be the top of the food chain in some cases. Okay, because food chains can be longer. And that is going to be your quaternary consumer. So I'm going to put it right here. Oh no, this color is too light. Here it is. So it would be your quaternary consumer, which means it is the fourth organism to eat. Fourth organism to eat. Okay, and it eats the tertiary consumer. It eats the tertiary consumer. Now, in the food chain that I'm talking about, of course, an eagle or a hawk would eat the snake. In the secondary consumer, I wrote first organism to eat. Okay, it is the second organism to eat. So second organism to eat. And it eats, let me put it right here, eat the primary consumer. Okay, it eats the primary consumer. Going back to our quaternary consumer, it always hunts for food energy. Okay, it will always hunt for food energy, and that is our predator. And it is a carnivore, which is a meat eater. Now, if any of these, either a herbivore, an autotroph, an omnivore, a carnivore, they die, well, they're going to be getting decomposed. Okay, they're going to be getting decomposed by the decomposers. Okay, and decomposers are, for example, bacteria, fungi, and earthworms. Okay, and what do? Well, they break down dead and decaying organic matter. Now, all of these nutrients, because that's what's gonna come out of, them eating up, the dead and decaying organic matter, those nutrients, I'm gonna put it in a different color. Those nutrients are going to be absorbed by our autotrophs, okay, because it's going to be found in the soil. Going to be found in the soil. So nutrients are absorbed by our autotrophs through the soil. Now, what else do autotrophs need? Well, they will be needing carbon dioxide, right? So those are our reactants in our formula for photosynthesis. Okay, so they would be needing CO2 they would be needing water. So H2O. And of course, our radiant energy. So our sun. Okay, our radiant energy. Now, non-living factors, which are abiotic, play a vital role in an ecosystem by supplying the needs to living factors, which are biotic. So, examples would be nutrients, soil, air, sun, and water. Those are non-living factors or abiotic factors, and they are essential for photosynthesis. Plants produce their own food thus providing energy to be passed through the food chain to support an ecosystem. Okay, now the arrows are basically going to represent, okay, the movement of energy, right? So these arrows right here or these arrows right here are the movement of energy from our producers, which are our plants. I'm going to put grass. Okay, our producer, all the way to our quaternary consumer, which is the top of the food chain. Okay, the energy is getting passed on. So, you have a small little research that activity that you are going to be doing. Okay, and I've already attached this file to your assignments as well. And it is this. So, investigating food chains. Plants, even the tiniest ones, are the start of all food chains. So look at the example of a food chain and draw animals in the circles to make your own. So I have grass, right? This is the example. Grass is a producer. The grasshopper is going to eat the grass, which makes him the primary consumer. Now, the frog is going to eat the grasshopper. That makes the frog a secondary consumer. The python will eat the frog, making the python a tertiary consumer. Now, I can keep going to the quaternary, which would make an eagle eat the python, and that would make the eagle the quaternary consumer. Now, your assignment is to draw in and label what type of consumer the organism is going to be. So, for example, the first one that you have, I've already given you the clover leaf, and that is a producer. Now you would go online and you would investigate, or you would look up, Google, clover leaf food chain. Okay, and for example, here it tells me that our primary consumer for a clover, so the one that eats the clover, would be a snail. Okay, so I would write down snail, and that is going to be your primary consumer. And then you would draw your snail right here. Then, who eats the snail? I would write it right here. Who eats this organism? And so on and so forth. There are different ways you can do it. You can just automatically look for, cloverleaf food chain. Or you can start with what eats the cloverleaf. And then what eats the snail. And so on and so forth. Right? So there's different ways. The second producer that I'm giving you is a decomposing leaf. The third one is phytoplankton. And then the fourth one is fungi, which I'm using right now as a producer. So this assignment or this investigation is due on tomorrow by midnight. Okay, so I'm giving you 2 entire days, so all today and all tomorrow, to submit this. If some of you are able to edit the file, which I put in a PDF, you can do that, right? You just Google the images, you can put them in the circles like I did, right? And you can label the bottom and you're ready to go. If you cannot if you cannot edit it, you can print it out, then print it out. And if you cannot do either or, then I would recommend you have the file open in front of you and you draw your circles or boxes. So for example, I would title my page so that way whenever I turn it in, Ms. Camacho knows what I'm turning in. So investigating food chains. Then I would do my first one, which is the clover leaf. I would put clover, leaf, producer, and then I would do my arrow, which means energy, and I would do my next box, and we said that it was a snail. That is our primary consumer. And then of course I would draw a snail. And so on and so forth. So you can do this if you cannot print it or edit it. Either way is, good.